He can build stone walls, or he can paint a picture. He can, you know, make lights and stained glass and you name it, and he can do it.
My wife refers to Steve as a Renaissance man, and he probably truly is a Renaissance man.
It's art wherever you look. He took an old, dilapidated parking lot, and he said, let's make that a beautiful story of West Jefferson. So he gets these old photos from the, you know, early turn of the century of what West Jefferson looked like and frames them. And who thinks of that, you know? So tourists are walking down and they've got this gift from Steve Willingham that they don't even know that he's the genius behind it all.
He has so much knowledge of so many different areas that he puts it together and he makes it happen.
You know, he is a true artist. You know, he trained with a master, and so he knows what he's doing.
Well, I was born in Atlanta, just outside of Atlanta in the country. My grandparents had some land, and several relatives built out a dirt road, and at the end of the road we had a 10-acre lake. And so I had a perfect childhood as a boy growing up. Just grew up in the country, and as I started high school, that's when the city of Atlanta started sprawling out, and I sort of didn't fit into the city life, so that's when I moved to the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina and started a life here, which I decided I wanted to look out my window and see trees instead of concrete buildings and automobiles. So.
Well, we met coming up on 37 years ago. I was in college with his brother, and we met at his dad's home one morning and ended up going to a party together that evening. And a week later, we decided we'd get married. And so we did, and we moved to West Jefferson and have been here almost 37 years.
We've been married for 37 years, so I think it's worked out pretty well. We just sort of hit it off from the very beginning.
He is trained with some really amazing artists, and I think you are a reflection of who you train, you know, with. You take something that you're drawn to and you embellish it, and you know. I trained with my dad, and you can see my dad's art in mine, but it became mine. And so you become very characteristic of yourself. I mean, you develop a style, and he has a very unique style. And you know, people love his art.
Well, I started painting probably 20 years ago. I had an uncle that oil painted the last couple of years of his life, and I got left an old trunk with some paints in it, and I just started squeezing it out of the tube and throwing it on canvases. And but I worked a full-time job for years, mainly in construction work a lot of the times, and but I always dabbled in sketching and charcoal drawings as kind of a background hobby while I was working. And as years went on and I moved to the mountains, about a year after moving here, Ben Long, he's a famous fresco artist, was doing a fresco painting in Glendale Springs, which is the community I lived in. And I was accepted as a local artist to study and work with him, with other artists. A few years later, I got the opportunity to study with an Italian artist, Egidio Antonaccio. He was a very flamboyant Italian and fun to be around. And he taught me a good many things, but he sent me in a roundabout way to an artist he studied under, Edward Smith, which was a master artist that had been on Rodale Drive and so paintings of Doris Day for $75,000 and the like. And so I got the opportunity to study with Edward Smith for 6 months. And that's when I started seriously painting for a livelihood. Right after studying with him, I got into a gallery in Carmel, California. The whole gallery was my paintings, and it went well for years. I started painting to Clint Eastwood's wife, one to Secretary of State James Baker. He has one of my paintings. And but then Enron crisis hit, and they had blackouts in California, and the big stock market crash when NASDAQ was going through the roof, and all the decorators from Silicon Valley were coming to Carmel to decorate homes and buying paintings, and we were doing really well. That came to a screeching halt when the stock market bottomed out. So the next thing I know, the curator's kind of getting into trouble financially, and he sold 8 or 10 of my paintings and not telling me, and I didn't get any money for them, and I had to hire a detective and get my paintings back. And I ended up not losing much money on that deal, but that's when I decided to do my own thing. And I started a gallery at my home, and then have expanded to buying the building downtown, and that's where I show now.
To teach himself how to type, he sat down and started making up a story. And he used to make up stories for his daughter when she was a little girl. And so, like everything else he does, that story led to months and months and months of work. And he worked on it for about a year, and of course he finished it, like he finishes everything else. And for about 20 years, I read that story to my class every year.
I have to have a reason for doing things. I mean, I've taught myself how to do fine woodworking by building a row-top desk with mortise and tendons and frame construction, hand-carved handles, dovetail drawers, everything. And it took me all winter, and I messed pieces up, but when I was through, I built a row-top desk, and I learned how to build anything. So I have to sort of have a reason for doing things. While I was writing the book, I had to use other books, novels and things that I had read. When I got to places in the book that I needed to learn about sentence structure and how I wanted to make it sound, I would just grab a book and read in it and try to find a place and see how they worked through that. And I've always sort of taught myself to do things like that. The book is written with a lot of unique characters that are true to the rainforest. And I tried to write in there that all the characters have wholesome, good, friendly relationships with each other, caring relationships for children to see. And it is an environmental book and has an environmental story to it, but it also has a big adventure to it.
So we had looked around in town to see what was available, and the biggest building in town, the largest, tallest building in town, happened to have been the old Parkway Theater. And the building we purchased was built in 1938, and we had always loved the exterior of it. It's an Art Deco building, and it had a lot of class, even though it was in pretty failing shape.
It set for 8 years or so, abandoned, run down, the roof was leaking, and Lisa and I bought it and renovated it and turned it into an art gallery and antique store.
When we bought it, it had no heat. It didn't have any lights except maybe 4 light bulbs down the center of the first floor and the second floor. I think it had 2 receptacles in the whole thing. And so we had to rewire everything. We had to add a lot of lighting for artwork because our plan was to have an art gallery. And we replumbed it. We redid all the floors. Everything had to be scraped and painted because it had been left and neglected for a number of years. We had to fix the roof. We pretty well overhauled the entire inside. We decided, since it was an old theater, we kind of borrowed off the theater theme, hence we named it the Artists Theater. and we hung long chocolate-colored drapes in the different sections to divide the artist's work. So each panel in here is a different artist, and all of the artists are from this particular area. We also have jewelry, we have clothing, antiques, we have some ceramics work, we sell Oriental rugs, so we have a lot of different things that we sell here.
Yes, I sell my artwork, and we've had as many as 12 other artists showing. Someone brought us an old photograph that's taken in 1938 of the building, so we repainted it to look like the photograph originally. Lisa and I together designed a sign that is sort of Art Deco, the whole building is, so the sign reflects that. And the old arcade signs that have the lights around them, instead of putting lights and making it somewhat gaudy, we had round knobs all the way around the sign, sandblasted into it in gold leaf so it resembles lights. And we picked 4 or 5 different fonts for the lettering on it. It's a very cool sign, I think. And
when we started off, of course, we were looking towards the entire community being successful, not just us, because you can't be successful by yourself. So, of course, Steve's artistic eye scoped around and decided what he could do or what he could offer to make the town more appealing. And we got real involved in the community as far as the Business Association, another association that kind of spearheads the whole high country area in North Carolina.
He's also done what is a real benefit to the community. We call it the 3 cows. If you look way behind me, you'll see the Ash Cheese Store. Across the street is the Ash Cheese Factory. We have the only commercial cheese factory in the state of North Carolina. And he looked at these milk containers out in front of that cheese factory for years, and all of a sudden in his creative mind he saw cows. So he designed and built a platform for the heads that you can see on the cows, and he worked with the high school industrial class. The kids at the high school actually cut out the templates, put them together, and then came down and attached them to those milk containers. And then Steve came back and painted them so that they look like black and white heifers or whatever it might be. But we now refer to West Jefferson as the 3 cow town.
so we pretty much renovated that street, and I think that really started a surge in the town sort of getting going into making some cool changes.
They conceptualized this place when it was a forest, you know. They came and saw everything that other people don't see, you know, and I just find that so amazing that, you know, that he transformed this and knew exactly where the house was going to be, and he took it like a canvas, you know. He approached it like, I don't want it to be flat, I need it to have depth, so I need this tree to be here so it creates this, you know what I mean? Who thinks like that? Steve does, you know. You can't teach that, it's just, you know, innate, and he's pretty amazing.
Well, on our 30th year, he found a parcel of land that he called me at work to come and look at one day. And we had been looking for land for the whole 30 years we had lived in our other house, but never could find a parcel that suited us or that we could afford. And when I went to meet him that afternoon, I got to the top of the hill where our little pond is, and I put one foot on the ground and I just said, I think we're supposed to be here.
This farm, when we bought it, was probably 60, 70 years old. No one had done a thing to it. It was all overgrown. There were barbed wire fences everywhere. There was a small driveway that came into the old original cabin at the very front of the property. And so I've built and designed a new road coming in that opened up the land. Had to clear probably 15 acres of land that was grown up in gnarly trees and turned it into pasture land for our animals, and cut the road in. I built a bridge and a pond and waterfall and planted several hundred trees. And my landscaping design is I always use native plants so that it, and the building blends in with the colors of the woods and all, so that everything I do blends in with the surroundings as opposed to just standing out, having some kind of ornamental trees or shrubbery or something. I've used maples and dogwoods and redbuds and rhododendrons. All of those are native to the area. So that's kind of my philosophy of landscaping. I like it to kind of blend in. So we've put in roads and cleared land, and then built overlook at the highest part of our property that you can see every major mountain in our county, Ashe County, the river, and the mountains in Virginia, the Grayson Highlands and Mount Rogers. Well, I wanted to build, I've designed and drawn plans for some buildings and landscape design, and I wanted to build a building, the concept of it to be like a lodge or rustic, a mountain home, to have some character in that flavor. So I designed the building and built it myself, and had some young carpenters helping me, and trying to keep it in that lodgy look or design. So I've used a lot of rustic aspects to it, such as the locust logs on the exterior for all the porches, and with the bark on it, and I've used poplar bark in the gables and the siding in places. And when we sold our house, we had 4 buildings at our other house. I had a woodworking shop across the street. We had our home. I had a studio in the backyard where I painted, did my artwork for years. And later on, I built a garage with a gallery over the top of it where I sold my paintings. So when I sold my house myself, and I had 5 months to build another house, and really not enough time or money to build 4 separate buildings. So I've designed this house to include a place to sell my artwork, a place for me to paint, woodworking shop, and living quarters. So it's a unique building. It has a little bit of everything in it. It's I think creatively done. I built most of the furniture. And
well, we bought 25 more acres that adjoined our land, and that 25 acres is a little bit separate from the part that we live on, although it's completely connected as far as the boundaries go. And on that parcel, there's a creek that runs through it, and we're going to get involved in what's called glamping, glamour camping, and have either big, huge tents that are decorated beautifully and mounted permanently to decks, or Steve would love to build some timber peg type construction cabins to put on those. And folks could come, and it would kind of be an off-the-grid type of thing. People could come and hike the land. They can also go fishing. We're going to be putting in 3 dams along the creek and putting in some fishing ponds so people can come and catch their dinner and have trout for dinner. And they can also hike over to the barn at the other portion of the farm, gather their eggs. We have 2 donkeys, we have a baby donkey, we've got a horse, 2 goats getting ready to have babies. We have a number of dogs, and so we invite everybody to come and commune with the animals and get into the farm experience.
But that's sort of our plan, our long-range plan, is to make the farm as nice as we can, and as many people come and enjoy it with us as possible, you know.
He and his wife, they're just a driving force together. They feed off of each other and come up with these fabulous creative ideas. They're the epitome of creativity. And we're just so lucky to have them in this county. Everything that people see, there's something that a Willingham had to do with.